The mistake made in this hand potentially cost this player $7 million. The World Series of Poker Main Event is the biggest poker tournament of the year, and at the final table, each decision could be worth life-changing money, millions of dollars. And that's the exact struggle that Kenny Hallaert finds himself in. He's second in chips against two of the most aggressive, maniacal, battling opponents we have ever seen at the main event final table, including Michael Mizrachi. Kenny is a pro's pro. He was on fire throughout the final table and the days leading up to it.
Like a bus.
But in the most pivotal hand of the tournament, things seem to take a turn for the worst. Let's take a look at what happened.
And he's going to have quite the wedding, I imagine, with another $2 million.
Also, it's very rare you see your funeral.
That's also true, yeah.
Another.
Seen some huge hands.
I'm surprised it's done. I would imagine he just calls. It's usually his style to just want to get mixed up with flops, but...
Five-handed, Kenny Hallaert is second in chips behind only Michael Mizrachi, who's been on a heck of a run. He was down to only one big blind not too long ago. Kenny Hallaert, 75 big blinds deep, raises it up, and the hijacks it with the ace-king offsuit. So far, so good, perfectly normal. For those who do not know Kenny, he's actually final tabled the World Series of Poker Main Event before. He took 6th place back in 2016, so he's already doing better than that. Also, he's been playing professional poker forever. He's also a tournament director, and every single summer he puts out a large spreadsheet that lists all of the poker tournaments that happen at all the major poker venues across Las Vegas. It is a huge help to many people, and the entire poker community owes Kenny a great deal of thanks for that. He also had an article on late registration, discussing how if you max late register for tournaments, you're probably going to make a little bit of money because you're very close to getting in the money, which has resulted in some tournament venues not allowing late registration all that late, which I personally think is awesome. Anyway, Kenny has the Ace King. He raises it up. Let's see what develops.
And that's part of why we've had such an insane 2 hours. Every spot, Brent, where there's been a choice, do I call this raise or 3-bet?
Yeah, it's been like the higher variance.
Every guy, every time, has chosen the 3-bet approach. Nobody's passively played a big hand.
With the exception of maybe hand number 1, which was just a cooler.
40 big blinds deep in the cutoff. Dunaway, 3-bets to 11.5 million with the pocket sevens. This is perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. And you may think, okay, fine, let's see what happens. However, it's important to note at this final table, Dunaway has been wild. 5 hands before, he defended with the 9-2 offsuit.
Montana, banana.
Against a Michael Mizrachi raise, he made a marginal made hand, third or fourth pair, whatever it was. Somehow he ended up winning the pot. He also 3-bet with the 7-3 suited earlier. He defended the Queen 4 offsuit, which is also not a good enough hand to defend at the final table for the most part.
No. He makes the call with the Queen 4
against a chip leader open 7-handed. And he raised under the gun with 9-7 suited into the chip leader. Again, very, very loose, aggressive, splashy, battly play. Probably how you go about winning the Millionaire Maker, which he actually did in 2023 for $1.1 million. He gets in there, he's fearless, he's wild. And to be fair, sevens is a really, 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 really good hand in his mind, I am sure. So he bumps it up to 1.1 million. Let's keep that in mind that this is not a straightforward GTO player re-raising. This is a pretty wild player re-raising.
Correct.
Wow, Misraki.
Are you serious?
Squeezing 2 jacks. What?
Which is it? 11,500,000.
Oh my goodness.
Double fisting with the Millie chips.
I'm telling you,
is there any
Kenny Hallaert might have to
folds?
fold Ace King. Second in chips, seeing this type of action, 3-bet, 4-bet behind.
Michael Mizrachi in the small blind picks up pocket jacks and makes it 40 million, which is gigantic. 20 big blinds. This is a situation where if you ran this to a GTO solver, the GTO re-raise size would be far smaller, something like 20 million or maybe 22 million. Nowhere near 40 million, because when you make it 40, you are very, very, very pot committed to calling if Dunaway, with only 80 million total, opts to go all in. And you don't want to do that in general because it means you don't really get to have bluffs in your range. Hands like ace-5 suited or perhaps other ace-x suiteds that may want to naturally put in a 4-bet bluff in the spot can't do that now because they have to call it off, which makes me think Michael Mizrachi's range is going to be very, very linear in this situation. Probably aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, maybe nines, ace, king, maybe ace, queen, maybe ace, jack, something like that. Now, there is something to say about how Michael put the money in. He just perked up, grabbed the money, loaded it in the pot. What you gonna do? Okay. Would he do this with pocket aces or pocket kings? Effectively the super nuts. I'm not going to say that I have any sort of real read on Michael Mizrachi, and he's been absolutely crushing everybody at all the big games recently. He won the $50,000 Players Championship this year. It was his 4th time doing that. He's been absolutely on fire. So I'm not going to say I have any sort of reads. But typically when people make this gigantic, obviously committing re-raise, they're not doing it with a hand like aces or kings, because with aces or kings, they don't really care if you stick around either by calling or jamming. So perhaps we can narrow Michael's range to something more like queens, jacks, tens, ace, king, ace, queen, something like that. That said, he should certainly use a smaller size because he does want to be able to re-raise the weakest hands in his re-raising range and then fold them to a shove. Okay, back to Kenny. Let's see what he does.
Boyevich, by the way, sitting there thinking, maybe this can happen again.
This is insane.
600K pay jump from 5th to 4th.
You can see him doing the accounting. I mean, the door's open where he obviously could rip it, but just think about that spot. You're second in chips.
And you have 75 bigs going into the hand.
And it doesn't look like Misraki's messing around, right? He's got a hand. He knows that Misraki has a hand.
In this specific spot, though, if he did rip it, I think Misraki folds.
He might. He might. Look at the sizing. That 40 million from Misraki, that's already committing his stack to Dunaway, who's the 3-better.
Right, but not to Hallaert.
Not to Hallaert. But I'm saying, I just don't think that ace-king off is in any sort of position to want to just play a pot for the main event.
Kenny is in the tank for a while because this is a very, very dicey spot. Because Michael has essentially announced, I have a hand I'm not planning on folding for 80 million chips. And potentially all 150 million of Kenny's chips. So if that's the case, you have to ask, do I have literally no fold equity? Would Michael make this re-raise to 40 million and then fold with a hand like pocket tens or ace king, maybe pocket jacks? If he would, well then now going all in becomes awesome for Kenny because he's going to have some fold equity, right? When he does go all in and get called, he's usually going to be flipping. And if he does lose, obviously it's a disaster because he goes from having a ton of equity, being second in chips at the final table, to out in 5th place, which is awful. However, if he picks up this pot, notice he is going to essentially take the chip lead away from Misraki, which is going to allow him to hopefully steamroll this final table. Now, I will say, in a lot of final table scenarios, when you are the chip leader and everybody else has a medium stack, you do get to get away with being quite aggressive. It's actually how I won my first bracelet this year. I had the chip lead at the final table. I ran everyone over. It was nice and chill. Given Dunaway is very active, and so Misraki, maybe that's not the case. Maybe being the chip lead is not quite as valuable in this exact final table configuration as it would normally be because these players seem to be trying to win the poker tournament. That said, I think this is a spot where the ace-king needs to go all in because if you fold, you're just going to allow Michael to continue running over this final table. Also, given Dunaway is 3-betting probably way wider than GTO recommends, you can't really count on him going broke in this situation often. as you would naturally be able to do if you raise in the spot and he 3-bet with a much stronger range. So I realize it feels scary, dicey, quite gross to go all in with the ace-king in the spot. I think because Dunaway's range is clearly wild, that's going to allow Misraki to now re-raise, maybe with hands like even ace-jack, ace-10 suited, pocket nines in this situation, recognizing, okay, I don't love it if Dunaway puts it in, but whatever, how bad could it be? And also, perhaps he's making it 40 with a hand like that, with the idea that that's going to look super strong to Kenny, and that's going to make Kenny fold a lot of hands in the spot, which means Kenny should instead rip it in with hands like ace-king, maybe even weaker if he feels overly aggressive and thinks he has a lot of fold equity, because he actually does have more fold equity than he normally would. Now, the question becomes, if he did jam, would Michael call the pocket jacks? I think he probably would not. You may say, no way, he's going to fold jacks after the way he's been playing, because Misraki has been in there battling. Once Kenny shoves in the spot, and you got to realize, Misraki knows Kenny's not insane, right? Kenny is a much more good, strong, call it fundamentally sound player. Jack shrivels up a lot. And if Kenny is jamming with aces and kings, maybe queens, and ace-king, pocket jacks is not in good shape. So Misraki probably should fold. Would he fold? I don't know, but he probably should, which again is why Misraki would prefer to make it much smaller than 40 million to begin with. All right, enough of me. Let's see what Kenny does.
But you'd be talking about more than 60% of the chips in play if it all went in.
Whether he's right or not, I think Kenny thinks he's the best player left. And is going to try to find a better spot.
I
Great
agree.
point.
This is not.
It's a great point.
This is not a hand you just want to get all in with right here, right now. Not with those payouts. Not with Boyevich having less than 20 bigs. This is sickening.
When he turned his head to the dealer, I thought he was going to just say all, looked like that when you turn your head to say all in, he turned his head to the dealer, said nothing, and now is turned back. I think he's folding.
And he does let go of the ace-king. Dunaway out as well, and Misraki extends his chip lead.
After a ton of thought, Kenny lets it go. Dunaway realizes sevens are in bad shape as well, and Misraki scoops the pot along with the chip lead, which he used to continue steamrolling his opponents for the remainder of the first day of the World Series of Poker Main Event Final Table. Do I fault Kenny for making this fold? I don't. Look, the players are playing for a ton of money. If Kenny simply folds here, he's probably going to take second or third place a large amount of the time and collect a lot of real cash. But sometimes you just got to load the money in. I'll talk to you next time. Ooh, click like and subscribe before you go. Bye.